Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Unstoppable Marketer Podcast. With me, as always, is Mark, our lovely co-host, Mark Goldhart, the lovely co-host of the Unstoppable Marketer Podcast. What's up, dude? How are you?
Doing good. Doing really good. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful intro, as always.
Always the same.
Always feel great to be here.
Yeah. It's always the same intro, you know?
Just pump that ego up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How you been?
Good. I mean, speaking of ego, my 3-year-old discovered free will this week during Halloween.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's rough.
What made him discover free will?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably his brother. But we were trick-or-treating, you know, and when your kids are little, people with kids know this, it's generally easier to tell them to wait or, you know, like when they're not quite.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't really have their autonomy. But August, our 3-year-old, we're trick-or-treating, and I said, okay, we're going to wait till we get home, then we'll pick out some candy. And he turns around and he goes, no, it is my choice. It is my candy. It is my choice.
And it's all over from there, dude.
And I went,
he figured it out.
I know, but here's the funny part. Then I said, August, no, it's not because we don't want you to have candy. It's because if you eat your candy now, you're going to feel sick. Your body will hurt. And then he said, no, my body, my choice.
Whoa. Really?
Yes. I was like, have you been watching political television? What is going on
He's
here?
been listening to NPR. And
yeah. Like, get out of here, dude.
My oldest discovered free will, and my wife and I have been, I mean, obviously she's 10, and Mark and I obviously believe in free will, obviously, but you kind of want your kids to discover that a little bit later than not sometimes, because it allows you to maybe control a narrative inside your home. Like homes can be chaotic as it is, and so it's nice to be able to control the narrative as much as you can.
Look, it's one thing having a 6-year-old discover
totally
things and tell you and question, but a 3-year-old, there's no logic there.
Outside of saying no, right? Obviously, 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds are going to tell you no. Go to bed, no.
Yes. Right?
That's not what we're talking about here. My daughter discovered it because we introduced her to the original Matilda. And Matilda, there's a line, and she loved the movie. And there's a line in Matilda where, so Matilda's parents are really rude to her, right? You've seen Matilda?
No.
You've never seen Matilda?
No.
Abby, have you seen Matilda? I can almost guarantee that 90% of the people listening to my voice will say they've seen Matilda.
I mean,
do you know what the premise of Matilda is?
Yeah, I think I read the book.
Like the Roald Dahl book? Okay. So
I haven't seen the movie.
You understand that her parents are jerks to her.
Yes.
Right? They're really rude to her.
There's some big teacher.
The Trunchbull. Miss Trunchbull.
Yeah, isn't she mean?
She's very mean. In fact, my wife and I last Halloween I was the Trunchbull for Halloween, and she was Bruce, who eats the cake. You got to see the movie. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Man, I don't remember anything about Matilda. Is she magic? Does she have magic?
Yes, Matilda has magic. So back to my daughter discovering free will. There's like a line in the movie where her dad punishes her and says that, like, if you do something bad, I can punish you. And she takes that like, oh, well, if you can do that, then I can do that. And she understands the powers that she has. And so she then begins to punish her parents without like punishing them. Like, not like you're grounded, but, you know, like she puts glue in her dad's hat because he's a dishonest like car mechanic. And so it hurts his hair. And my daughter like took that line to heart. So it's like, okay, if my parents are punishing me, then I can punish them when I see them do something contradictory to our belief system. So for example, like if I'm telling our kids like to not to yell or not to swear and I do that, then like my daughter, it's like, well, you don't get to do this now. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
Well, can I tie this into marketing?
Yes, absolutely.
I know this is a marketing podcast, so probably should tie something into marketing here. But the I had an epiphany with my child. So, parenting teaches you a lot of things. It's really hard because I think we've talked about this before, but the hardest part about parenting is that it holds up a mirror to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you start realizing all the things you do all
Yeah, all
the
the things you do
time that
wrong.
like yeah, like you're teaching your kids the ideals of
Right.
how to live, and then you recognize like how often you fall short of those ideals that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to teach them how to live.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other night, my 6 year old was just having a hard time. He wanted his mom to come back. He wanted me to come in, and he was just having a hard time going to sleep and was just really sad. And then finally, I was like, okay, so why do you feel this way? And like I just asked him why, like 4 times until he went all the way back and said, well, it's because you guys told me to go turn off the light. And then it felt like you were mad at me because I went and did what you told me to do, but it was just taking too long, and that made me feel sad. I was like, oh, well, we're horrible parents. Because it's bedtime, you know how you're like, hurry up, come on. Like,
Right. And then he turned off the light, but he didn't do it quick enough, so you were upset that he didn't do
because
it.
he got a little distracted in the
Yeah.
bathroom, like
Right.
turn on the sink or something.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
like, Theo, let's go to bed. I'm like, ugh. But anyways,
The tide of marketing.
this is the marketing
go.
principle here, is that in parenting, I've learned that it's a reciprocal relationship, right? Like it's okay to mess up as a parent as long as there's an open feedback loop. So as long as your kid knows that you will say sorry and like it's an ongoing process, you'll realize your kids can handle things like pretty well. Like you can say, "Hey, sorry,
Sure.
I messed up with that," or "Hey, we were busy," or "Anna was crying, we got flustered." So we can talk about that and they understand.
Yeah.
And as long as you're having that open dialogue and understanding, like it's a mutual thing here, right? Like as a parent, you don't come in there and it's not like you're just a dictator all the time. Like sometimes you do have to be a dictator. I'm sorry you do.
Right.
But it just has to be open and fluid. Same thing with marketing. Like you just have to have an open and reciprocal relationship with your customers, because sometimes you're just assuming they're feeling something and like you're like, why don't you understand what we're saying?
Right.
It's like, well, maybe ask them like, well, why? Like, why aren't they understanding what we're saying?
Yeah. Why
Or
are
maybe
you
they're not
acting?
in the emotional space that we think they are in order to sell them, whatever product is we're marketing at this time in this message.
Yeah.
So how do we relate to them more and understand like what the actual need is? Because Theo at that time, he needed us to go in there because he almost felt like he needed reassurance that like we cared. Because usually he's not so fidgety. Like he doesn't need us to go lay by him and stuff. But it's almost like he
Right.
needed us to go back because he felt like we wronged him.
Sure.
And then he was asking for us to come back in for that reason,
Yeah.
right?
Like you guys were mad at him, but there wasn't a resolution.
Yeah,
Like he needed a resolution.
exactly where I was thinking, well, he was in the like, come on, it's bedtime and you're in the bathroom taking way too long. Like just, you needed to rinse your mouth out and then just shut the, because he didn't do his mouthwash.
Got it.
Turn off the light and go to bed. But he felt like so deeply hurt that we, right? That we told him to do something and then like got mad at him
For doing it.
doing it.
Yeah.
So in his mind, it was totally different. I think that happens a lot in marketing. If you're just assuming things,
Right.
and sometimes when things aren't catching, you just got to ask why and self-reflect about like where your customers or your target audience actually is.
Yeah, versus like what a lot of people in this situation will do is in the marketing situation and even parents is like you'll ignore that, keep doing things the same way, right? And not understanding why things aren't getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So if the next night, the same thing, right? Like my 7-year-old or my 8-year-old boy, he's super slow to do things too. He's not a slow kid. He just does things without urgency.
Yeah.
Right. And so like we could get caught up in this, like he accomplishes what we ask him to eventually, but we're always mad at it. And we can't figure out why he's not behaving better. Same thing here. Like if you keep doing that, you're in this, and I think a lot of marketers or a lot of business owners do that same thing, right? Where it's like, hey, things aren't working. Let's just keep doing this one thing. But if you're not looking at the data or talking to your customers to actually figure out what the problem is, you're just going to be in this endless cycle of woe.
Yeah, you really will. And it's just taking a little moment of self-reflection or just curiosity. I just call it that, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to get too deep. It's just like, just be curious about maybe why things aren't landing.
Right.
And you'll usually uncover the insight you need to make that connection. But ultimately, it's a connection you're trying to make with people through marketing. And, what I learned in that lesson as a parent was it was connection, right? It was a broken connection that I needed to repair in that moment, but my communication wasn't good,
Sure.
right? I thought the communication was clear for him.
Turn the light off urgently.
Like, hurry, you forgot to use your mouthwash, go spit, turn the light off, and it's bedtime, like we're an hour late. But for him, he thought he was going through all of the process, right? He was checking off the boxes, being a good little soldier, and then
That's so funny, dude.
and then
It's so cute.
And then we're getting mad at him for taking too long. So again, reciprocal relationships, I think it's really important. And you're totally right. Like, you just got to realize what you think is the situation isn't always the situation. Like, your perception of what's happening isn't their perception.
Yeah, perception isn't always reality, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Bestie. Bestie is the first ever AI-powered post-purchase survey platform. Bestie is revolutionizing the way you understand your customers. Are you uncertain about what motivates your customers to choose your products? Unsure how customers are discovering your brand or which marketing channels are most effective in driving sales to your website? Or do you know how long it takes your customers to make a purchase decision? Look no further, because Bestie is the ultimate solution for you. With Bestie's cutting-edge AI feature, you can effortlessly create comprehensive surveys in just a matter of seconds without the need for any of your valuable time. And that is not all. Bestie's automated insights will regularly provide you with actionable information week over week, giving you the tools to drive your business forward. Now, with the holiday season in full swing, there is no better time to start gathering valuable customer data. Bestie is offering an exclusive 30% discount for Q4 alongside a 14-day free trial. Do not miss out on this opportunity to supercharge your business and truly get to know your customers. As e-commerce owners and agency owners ourselves, we use Bestie every single day to help us make better decisions on how we communicate, acquire, and grow our customers. Visit Bestie AI or check out apps.shopify.com/bestie today to secure your Q4 pricing. Don't wait. Start making data-driven decisions with Bestie today.
Not to just completely change the subject here, but one thing that I wanted to bring up is, have you heard about the new Beatles song that just got released? Was it yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Called Now and Then?
Yeah. I listened to it.
What'd you think of it?
It's whatever.
It's whatever. Are you a Beatles fan?
When you say, are you a Beatles fan? I guess the answer would be there's levels to Beatle fandom.
Like, you like all the single hits versus I listen to the Beatles regularly.
Yeah, like, full disclosure, the Beatles are fine in my book.
Yeah.
They've got their hit songs are good, and I think I respect them for what they did in the genre and in the industry. But yeah, I was never really into the Beatles.
Yeah.
So when I heard this song, I mean, of course, like, Hey Jude's a great song, and
right.
I don't know, what is it, like, In My Life is a great song.
Sure.
And, some of their earlier hits are great songs, but I wasn't, like, way into them.
Sure. Well, I don't think that that's a crazy thing for people that are our age. Like, the Beatles were doing things that other bands hadn't done back in the 70s.
But now it's
and so it was like, so the people who were like listening and who were Beatles fans, were diehard, Yeah. And if they were diehard, then
some might call them the
sometimes
Swifties of the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right.
Very, very, like, I'm sure a lot of people would be very upset if we compared the Beatles to Swifties, like Beatles fans to Swifties.
They're the same thing.
You'd
though.
get some people who would just think that is.
Really?
I guarantee it. We're gonna clip this, and I guarantee say what you just said, that Beatles fans are just like Swifties, and we'll clip that, and people will come at me so hard when I post that on TikTok.
What's the difference? It's just fandom, right?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
But I would love to know why you think people would consider it different. Like, well, because here's what it really is. It's just because people think their artist is better, and so that they're naturally have better taste, and so like comparing their taste to someone else's taste is like, how dare you?
Yeah.
The Beatles are the
epitome
of rock music. How dare you compare us to Swifties?
Swifties are something else though. Like,
are they?
Yeah. I mean, they're like, that is one of the most intense.
But not compared to what the Beatles fandom was at the time. It's the same. Maybe, I mean, the Beatles fandom might have been crazier.
I agree with you. I just wasn't around to experience it.
Yeah, I mean...
Right? To be able to say, oh yeah, you're totally right. There was no social
media, but judging by the clips...
Anytime I post something about Taylor Swift, the amount of people, like, you would think that if I ever say anything, like some of the videos I've said about Taylor Swift have been, like, I actually don't think they've been negative.
But everyone just comes into...
But it's like an overprotective mom. Mm-hmm. Swifties are like overprotective mothers. Like...
Man, if you didn't think they were coming after you before.
I know. But what's funny...
Wait till this gets online.
But what's funny is I like Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So that's what's so funny is like I'll say something about it, and then these women or guys will come after me like hardcore about Taylor Swift for talking. How dare I have a conspiracy theory about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, for example? And they'll say something about Taylor Swift, and I will agree with them.
Really?
I'm like, yeah, you're right. Great music.
That cracks me up.
And then they don't say anything back to me, and I'm like, you're jumping to this conclusion as if I hate Taylor Swift.
Right.
When in fact, I actually think she's a fantastic artist. And I got kids, and so my kids listen to the music, therefore I listen to her music.
Yeah, ironically, you're a much bigger fan of her than me.
Oh yeah. I went to her concert in 2009.
I've never, like we talked about, I've never actually listened to a full song of hers.
I went to Taylor Swift before Swifties existed, bro. I'm the original
Really?
Swiftie.
Before they existed?
Oh yeah. She came to the Delta Center.
Before they were summoned?
Yep. Came out in a Darren Williams jersey.
Nice. D. Will?
Yeah, D. Will.
Shout out.
Shout out. Love D. Will. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, teardrops on my guitar. You name it. That was classics. Deep cuts only.
Good old Swift.
But Taylor, back to the Beatles. So you hear the song. So to let everybody understand what's kind of happening here is, so there's a crazy amount. The story, like, I think there's going to be more and more details that will come out, probably as people like Paul McCartney get interviewed about it and he speaks about it and talks a little bit more in detail. Or maybe I just didn't do enough research about it. But apparently what happened was John Lennon recorded a song back in the 70s. And the track...
Just John Lennon?
From the lyric, I think the lyrics, yes.
Okay, so John Lennon wrote the song.
Yep, wrote the song and sang it, right? And recorded it, but there was so much audio background noise. Like, I don't know where he was recording it, but like
there was a lot of reverb.
Yeah, a lot of reverb. I think I've got the article right here.
What would you call that, Abby?
Given the original tape quality,
Miss Sound Engineer,
a persistent hiss, and the TV in the background, Lennon's demo just wasn't showroom ready. They couldn't isolate the vocal and piano enough to polish them up where they needed to be, so the song was shelved. So,
what album was this? Was this their last album? Like, was this during their Yoko Ono?
I don't know the answer.
Stage.
I don't know the answer to that question. Abby might have to find that for us, but I don't know the answer. But anyways, what ended up happening is AI
just so you know, I know a lot about the Beatles. So if somebody's going to try to call me out on my fandom,
if everyone's been listening to you long enough, I think we know that you can probably spit out some Beatles facts that all of us would be.
Because I find them very interesting. I just don't love it. Like, their music just isn't my style.
Sure.
So yes, is this during their last album?
We don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
because they had the documentary that was released when they were going through their final album together, when it was just falling apart, and like Paul McCartney and John Lennon were just butting heads, and Yoko Ono was just awkwardly there all the time, just being weird. I said it. She was being weird.
Yeah.
It's very obvious. The whole thing's weird. So that's their final album. They were gonna redo a reunion. See, that's something I didn't know. And so he was recording that for their reunion.
Hard to know.
So what year was this? Like late 70s?
This is what it was for. So
Okay.
he recorded it by himself on a tape
In the late 70s.
in the late 70s. And then it was going to come out after his death. The song was considered, it says that, the song was considered as the third Beatles reunion single for their 1995-1996 retrospective project, The Beatles Anthology, following Free as a Bird and Real Love, both based on Lennon's demos. So he had recorded it.
Maybe not necessarily for what they were going to release it as.
Yeah.
Recorded it. It sounds like they tabled the song because background noise, TV, hissing, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But essentially they've been working on trying to re-earth this since like the 80s.
Yeah.
And with the most recent technological updates within AI has been able to remove and isolate the vocals and the piano that he plays. And then I believe that maybe Paul McCartney got together and maybe recorded some of played some of the other instruments to
The backtrack.
Yeah, the backtrack to get it. And they're saying that it will most likely be the last song, technically the last song ever released by the Beatles.
Wow.
Now and then. So AI. Add it again.
Yeah, AI is interesting because as strange as it sounds, it actually has the potential to make life a little more human again.
Let's hear it.
Well, like that's a wonderful example, right? Because, like I don't really, whatever, I already explained that.
We know you're not a big Beatles fan.
It doesn't like strike me with nostalgia and yeah, but it will for a lot of people.
Totally.
And that's a great thing. Like a lot of people are going to get a nice little moment in their day or a pick-me-up from a song from a band that means a lot to them. And I think that's great because, AI is able to clean up that mess and now project it. And it's doing that with photos and videos too, right? Like it's going back and these AI models can clean and remaster videos and old photos, and it's interpreting text, like ancient text.
Right.
So it actually has the ability to connect us even more, not only to each other, but to our past. So I think that's a really fascinating subject.
Yeah, I agree.
Just in general.
I agree with that. Could be a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah, I've always said this. Like AI is either going to go Terminator on us or like C-3PO on us.
Very helpful.
Yeah, like little helpful robots that help us and they're nice.
Yeah.
Or, like
just kill us.
Everything wants to kill us.
Yeah.
Kind of doesn't seem like it's going to go in the middle.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, even the middle doesn't sound great.
Yeah, middle doesn't sound great either.
But yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, speaking of C-3PO, I think this is just a good thing to talk about with marketing. So we've been talking about branding and marketing, and as a marketer, right, you're only as good as your product.
Yes.
Not always true, but generally speaking, your product makes it easier.
One of my favorite lines ever spoken by any human on this podcast was from Chris Hall, you weren't on that podcast. You were sick, I think.
I was, but All-American Center from the University of Texas.
Yep.
National champion.
CMO, I believe, at the company.
Bruce Bolt.
Batting gloves, baseball batting gloves. And he said, behind every great marketer is a better product.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's one of the best lines ever spoken on the podcast.
Well, a good example of this in the sports world is Michael Jordan is clearly the face of modern athletes. and athletics. Like he is the epitome of what you would aspire for.
Sure.
Like kind of the ideal
Yep.
version of what you would consider a champion. But would Michael Jordan be viewed as Michael Jordan if he never had Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen?
For sure.
I'm not saying it diminishes who he is as an athlete and
No.
what he would have done on the court,
Totally.
but without all the championships,
Does he have all that without those people?
yeah, and I think the answer is no. He wouldn't.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think he would have had 6 straight,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But
Especially back then. I mean, because there were he was up against some amazing teams, right?
yeah, and it was just a really physical league. And
Totally.
again, this isn't diminishing who Michael Jordan is in my mind. Maybe in
Right.
other people's minds it might, but it's just
Yeah.
saying he had a product behind him
Mm-hmm.
that was able to help him perform and achieve a level of success
Yeah.
beyond just stats. So he had the stats and he always was going to get stats.
Yeah.
But how many athletes do we see or basketball players nowadays that have the stats but don't have the rings? So a good example of this is go in the NFL. Look at all of the great quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah.
But who's the quarterback that everyone talks about?
Tom Brady and
Tom
Pat
Brady.
Holmes, right?
Tom Brady, because he won
It's won the most rings.
all the rings.
Yeah.
So he is the man. But
Yeah.
he had a product behind him. He had great defenses. He had a good system. He had a lot of things playing for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's not the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm just saying the product behind it helps.
He did it though. Then after he left too,
With
which
a
is-
great defense.
That's true. Not everything the same though, right?
Really, it was Gronk. Yeah.
That is the question,
Gronk to
right?
come
He got
back.
Gronk to retire and then come back. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
That's like my favorite story ever. Hey,
And-
we're trading you. Actually, I retire. Retired for a
and then
year.
Tom
went
leaves and he follows Tom.
Yeah.
But again, this isn't taking away their individual
Sure.
accolades. It's just to say that like there's no such thing as doing everything on your own. Like we are interconnected. Like you depend on other people and anything that you achieve. And marketing is no different. Like you depend on not only good products, but like teams and creatives. Like you're a team player.
Yeah.
And so marketers that are trying to find success right now, I think you just got to understand, hey, what is the branding and how do you build on that?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a lot easier for long-term success
Yeah.
to do that. Because you can just spend a bunch of money and you'll get a bunch of sales. But if the product isn't good,
Are they going to come back?
yeah, you're going to have returns or you're going to
Are
have
they going
complaints. You're going to have...
to refer their friends and family?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like this topic, because I think that in the wake of paid media back in like 2015 and 2016 made it really easy to just like for people to be a nobody. I remember when we started Asher Golf, we were a nobody. Like nobody knew who Asher Golf was in 2016, 2017.
Right.
There was a clear person. Asher Golf sells amongst other things, but they, primarily at the time we sold colored golf gloves, right? Stance, but for golf gloves. And there was a clear winner of a brand that was already doing that. And they were crushing it. They owned the industry. And I was able to just put $100 a day to spend and I'd make $5,000 a day. So I think paid media and social media made it very easy to just win when you put money to things. But with the like kind of e-commerce evolution as things like Shopify made it easier to start websites, to sell. You've got things like 3PLs that's made it very easy that you don't have to find warehousing and pay for all that. They can just ship things directly. And then you have like the drop shipping phenomenon that happened, 2020, 2021, where people...
It's been going on for... Yeah,
sure, but like that's when people just came out of the woodworks, and now aren't necessarily... It's not even as big now, but it was huge then, right? Where it's like, I'm going to go buy 200 of these things from Alibaba for $2 and I'm going to sell it for $4. On Amazon or on Shopify, and I'm going to run paid ads. And as long as I get 2 ROAS, I'm going to win.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people get so focused on just selling I can sell, I can do marketing and get a return on my dollar. And a lot of people forget about the brand building side of things, because the paid side of things gets you the money today, brand is tomorrow. And I don't think a lot of people we're instant gratification people, right? In 2023, right? The reason why you don't go to the gym is because you work out once and you don't see a six pack, or even you work out for a week and you don't see that. And so we kind of stop. Like like we want immediate results, and building a brand doesn't give you immediate results. So it's very easy to say, this is a waste of time. What's my ROI on this? I'm not getting an ROI. ROI from a revenue and a time perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the conversation about why building a brand is super important. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, and it also relates to just marketing and building your marketing career and becoming an expert marketer. I think we live in an age, it's interesting, we have more information and more access to information than we've ever had as humans. Yet you can't trust almost all of it because so much of it is just inconsequential to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we're inundated with information.
Yep.
Right. And I think a lot of people, which essentially leaves a lot of room for snake oil salesmen.
Sure.
You have a lot of people online saying, this is how follow my 10-step program and I will make you rich, or you will become an overnight success in marketing, or whatever it is, right? It's just not true.
Yeah.
Right? The expert marketers are the ones that know that there is no silver bullet besides really understanding their customers and really going through tests and knowing how to measure and going through A/B tests and understanding the causality and correlations of the things they're doing, and also the things that are exogenous to their environment, so outside of their control.
Yeah.
And tying it all together, right? It's a beautiful art and science all at the same time, but it doesn't matter if you go follow, like, sure, go learn, right? You can learn from other people, but the point being, there is no silver bullet out there. And there's no silver bullet in making your brand either.
Yeah. I mean, the silver bullet is having a good brand.
If there is a silver bullet, yes,
but
it's the brand.
But there's so many things that go into building that silver bullet.
Yes.
Right? So that's why you don't really call it necessarily a silver bullet.
Yeah. You want to hear a silver bullet story about a brand?
Yes.
That everyone knows?
Yes.
It's called Star Wars.
Yes.
I mean, Star Wars hasn't been good in so long.
Well, I think Disney's even come out and said that they're not making stuff anymore because it's flopping.
Well, here's the thing. Like, it's made plenty of money.
Of course.
But the movies themselves haven't been good in a long time. Or great. Sure, maybe some of them have been good.
Yeah, that's also something we will clip, and you will have a lot of people who will be very upset that you said that.
I will fight. I don't even care. I will fight everyone on it.
Well, I will be the one to post it on my platform, and
I actually do like Star Wars.
You will then have to go fight them.
But if we're just going to be honest with ourselves, it hasn't really been great since Return of the Jedi. So that's my hot take. But anyways, building a brand. George Lucas put everything he had into Star Wars. And not a lot of people believed in it, except for him. But he went out and created the technology for the special effects, right? He was really big on changing the way you intro movies. So he didn't like having credits at the beginning. He put them in the back, which eventually caused a huge problem with I think it was the Directors Guild or Actors Guild Association. So he quit.
Yeah.
So George Lucas was kind of an outsider in Hollywood, but because of the success of his first movie, American Graffiti, he got some funding from 20th Century Fox, but it was kind of stipulated on a few things, and the contract in writing was it was never signed. So I think it was just like a formal agreement, and they waited on it. But with American Graffiti getting bigger, it gave George Lucas more leverage. So he funded everything he had into making the original Star Wars himself, because that was his vision.
Yeah.
It was his brand.
Yep.
He guided that whole thing, directed it, produced it, went all through like creating new special effects for it, like everything.
Yeah.
And then he kept all the merchandising rights. He owned the brand.
Yeah.
And that's why George Lucas is now worth more than any other director you've heard of.
Yeah.
Because he sold Star Wars for, I think it was what, $4 billion or something
Yeah.
to Disney.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it. I don't know if that's what it was, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So
I would actually thought it would have been a little more.
I can't remember. I don't know
Yeah.
the price tag. We'll look it up right now. But George Lucas built a brand
Yeah.
by himself because he was visionary. He knew what he wanted in that original piece. And from that one thing, Star Wars is a household name and always will be.
Yeah.
But you don't think about the true daring nature and risk he took on to make it a reality.
Yeah. And the lack of positive ROI in those first
Yeah.
maybe 10 years.
Well, and the marketing was tough because they were running out of money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so why did it blow up? It's because he created a great product and a great brand, and everyone told each other about it.
Totally.
Right? And that's kind of how movies work. Yes, you have advertising, but the great ones, it's like it spreads like wildfire because people left the theater experiencing something that they had never experienced before.
Yeah, product and experience. Like, if there's any takeaway, like the two things is your product and the experience you give your customer are the two ways to build a brand, right? And they can oftentimes be one of the same thing. You know, I say experience. I separate experience because there are plenty of people who are maybe creator-led brands who've built amazing brands based off of their personality, and they sell relatively mediocre products, but because of who they are and how they sell it, and the experience they give the customer and being a part of the Trevor Crump brand or whatever it is, that's the experience. I don't care if this breaks on me in 2 weeks, I'll just buy another one.
Because it's a status symbol or whatever it is.
Yeah, the experience of the status symbol, whatever. So experience and product are like really what it comes down to, building an amazing brand.
It really is. And I love the story of George Lucas because everyone thinks of Star Wars as what it is now.
Yeah.
But people forget, like it was this little ragtag production that people really thought was going to just fail, like a space wizard opera and this, like what is this?
Yeah.
I mean, the actor, Alex Guinness, who was Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original, like I know that there's some quotes of him saying like he had no idea. He's just like, I don't know what this is. Like, this is kind of silly.
That's so funny.
Because he was a big time actor. I think he had won an Academy Award or two. Yeah, before Star Wars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was like the only real actor at the time
Like
that they
real
had.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, so like all the actors were nobodies besides him.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like that's crazy what a brand can do. Cause it like Star Wars has changed like a culture. Like Star Wars is a culture. Like the Star Wars is like people who love Star Wars are Swifties. Right? But but Swifties will at one point in time diminish, I think, as she diminishes.
Yeah, where Star Wars
is going to be around. Like people will always love those old movies, the good old ones, like the three, or is it four?
There's three.
Yeah, the three first ones, even though when you go back and watch them.
No, they're great.
I know, but like
the first two are great.
But the quality, the special, the like how far advanced we are, like you could look at that and be like, because I'm somebody who looks at old, like I get turned off by older things.
Oh, really?
Just in general. Yeah, that's my personality type.
See, I just rewatched the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And another guy who did this was Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, right? There was already a brand there though.
Yeah.
But the special effects in Empire Strikes Back are phenomenal. Like I could watch.
Are they still?
Yes.
I have to go back and watch.
Like, is it old? Like, yeah, like you can tell it's older, but
that just,
it's
like I said,
great.
That turns some people off. But like you got this I did not grow up in a family that would die hard Star Wars fans, so I'm not a really die hard Star Wars fan. My brother-in-law, on the other hand, grew up in a family that was die hard, so he's die hard.
Yeah.
And now my nephew, who's 13, is die hard, and he's gonna have kids that are gonna be die hard on it. All from these decisions that George Lucas made, what, 30 years ago?
Well, I guess it'd be more like almost 50 now.
Okay. See,
45 years.
History is not my thing, right?
Well, the first Star Wars, I think, was 1974.
But yeah, so you've got these like decisions, and he would have never known the impact and the ROI that man was going to get after he's putting all of his savings and time and attention into building something different and building out a good product and a good experience. And so I think that that's where, as we come to a close, like I think that that's the big thing that everybody needs to be thinking about is how do you make a product that people, really the question is how do you make a product that people are going to tell other people about? Like that's the tell-all tale for it. You don't need to say you're going to be a good product because people don't tell people about good products. So it's like, how are people going to tell other people about this, number one? And how can I make the experience really good, number two?
Do you have the answer, Abby?
It's 46 years old, 1977.
I said 30 years, huh?
What did I say? I said 45?
You
Someone
said almost
said
50. You
Well, I
said,
said it's probably closer to 50, and then I said
Yes.
45.
Yeah, and I think you said 30.
I said 30. I was way off. Yeah, this is
It's
not
an
my
old movie.
Yeah, it's almost been 30 years since 2020 or 2000. So that's if I would have thought a little harder, I probably would have said more like 45, 50.
Well, it's just because we're already in 2020 and
Yeah,
you're
it's
still
crazy.
thinking it's 2010.
Yeah, yes and no to that. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Unstoppable Marketer. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. Please go rate and subscribe the podcast, whether it's good or bad. We want to hear from you because we always want to make this podcast better. If you want to get in touch with me or give me any direct feedback, please go follow me and get in touch with me. I am at the Trevor Crump on both Instagram and TikTok. Thank you, and we will see you next week.